Welcome back to the Homes on Homes podcast. I'm Mike Holmes. I started this podcast to keep educating people on how to make it right, just like I've been doing for over 20 years on television. Here, you'll find raw, unscripted conversations with experts on building healthy homes, choosing quality products, safety at home, and more. Let's get started. Welcome to another episode of Homes on Homes podcast. Today's subject is really kind of touchy because you've seen me talk a lot about electrical and all the pictures that are sent in and we laugh at, which is very dangerous, by the way. Today, it's all about product safety, the products you buy online, products you buy at the store. What are you looking for? What is safe? How to use it? And right now, I'm joined by Emily and Diana from Electrical Safety Authority to talk about the importance of buying the right electrical solutions or products. Emily LaRose is Vice President, Regulatory and General Counsel at Electrical Safety Authority. Diana Medill, did I say that right?
You got it.
Is a technical advisor with ESA. So who is actually responsible for product safety?
So it's a medley of regulatory oversight. We have part of the story, and Health Canada has part of the story, and we work very closely together, especially on
Health
consumer
Canada.
products. That's right. So for consumers, they have two regulators looking out for their safety.
And you're talking about products that people buy online that are in the stores?
That's right.
Interesting. That's really interesting. I didn't know Health Canada was part of this.
Yeah, they have a consumer product safety part of their mandate, as well as drugs and food and other products. They have an oversight with respect to those consumer products across the country, not just electrical products, but other products.
Well, let's just talk about electrical products. What do we want to see on a product? Like ESA certified, CSA approved? What are we looking for?
So for the kind of products that we as consumers would buy, there should be a certification mark, a Canadian certification mark. Regardless of what kind of product it is, if it plugs in to an outlet, it should have that mark.
What does that look like?
So there's a few different ones. CSA is one, Underwriters Laboratory. There's a host of certification bodies.
Would it be better if we see them all, or is one recognizable that's good enough?
One recognizable is good enough, and we on our website have that list of certification marks that are approved for Ontario, and you can go on that website and make sure that the one you're seeing is approved for Ontario.
How does Electrical Safety Authority fit in when purchasing products?
Well, ESA would be responsible when our inspectors go and look at an installation for making sure that any products that are used have a recognized certification marking on them. We're also a resource to anybody that is purchasing a product. If they have questions about it, they're unsure if it's properly certified, they can reach out to us and ask those questions. We can make sure that that product is approved for Canada. And we also deal with things like products that have identified safety issues on them. So if we, for example, have a product reported to us through, a fire or something like that, we would do some investigation into that product or report it to Health Canada if it falls under the consumer product.
I'm going to tell you a funny story. We were doing a show, and this is true. We found a product that was, I believe, from the United States, and it was in-counter hidden stovetop. Okay. So you had to open the face and turn it all on. And it was DSA because we had permits for everything we do. He came in and he goes, "That's not certified." And I went, "What? What do you mean it's not certified? What do you mean?" Now, eventually they got the certification. So we had to do something with that countertop. They couldn't use it until the certification came out. So even we were actually surprised that a product that was brought to us, "We want you to show this product." It sounded like a fabulous idea. There was only a certain mark on the counters where the actual hot pads were from the stovetop. And so the idea was it was beautiful. You could easily use the countertop for space. And if you want to heat it, put your pan on top of it. If you take the pan off, you can touch it and it doesn't burn your hand. I thought it was amazing, but it wasn't certified. Got certified in the next 6 months, I believe it was. Right. So we were very careful to use it again, but I was surprised by this, that all of a sudden something came into us and we put it on the show and it was not certified. So we had to do something about that.
Yeah.
What does that make me learn? It makes me learn to, is the certification on the product? And it might have been Frank that found it, actually. Because you know Frank. He'd be like, Mike, this is not certified.
He'd be looking for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really good lesson because I think we're taught to be smart consumers with our money. I think we're teaching our children to be smart consumers in terms of misleading advertising and those kinds of messages. And I think one of our goals at ESA is to make sure people are smart consumers with respect to safety as well. It's not just cheap products. It's not just products that are bought online, although that is a concern. It can be new emerging products. Really, as consumers, we need to be smart. We need to be checking them when we first receive them to make sure they've got those certification marks.
Now, there is a reason we're doing a certification mark. Like this product that we use, the stovetop thing, I was surprised it wasn't certified in Canada. But at the same time, I wasn't surprised. It was just it was a new product. Was it verified? Was it certified? The answer was no. What could happen if we use that product? The point is, there could be a fire.
That's certainly one of the risks. I think Diana can speak to some of the potential risks in terms of installed and plugged-in products.
Sure. Maybe I'll tell you a story, actually. My own family, I have a son who's 9 years old, and when he was a baby, my mom tried to buy him a little night table lamp, and it was the cutest thing. It had a little dog on it. She bought it from a reputable seller, but it had no certification mark on it, and she knew to look for that, but didn't know to ask for it ahead of purchasing. So she got it home, called me and said, "Hey, there's no certification mark on this. Is it safe?" And we took a look at it and said, let's take it apart and let's see what's inside. And we found the worst workmanship on the terminations for the wires. We found it wasn't designed even for the voltage and frequency in Canada. So it was a real fire hazard, that one. And, something that people should look out for, even something as simple as a light.
And the hardest part or worst part about that is for kids.
It was for a kid, for
So
a baby.
all parents are going to go, hey, that's safe. I can buy that. It's just a lamp. It's what
Yeah.
a lamp only does a 60-watt bulb,
Yeah,
but it could be a fire hazard
absolutely. Yeah,
And-
or a shock hazard.
or a shock hazard for that matter. So this stovetop more than likely was safe. It just wasn't recognized in this country, correct?
It's quite likely, but until it's certified, you don't know.
Because it could be like you said, it could be not wired for this country.
Correct.
Which makes total sense to me because in Europe they use 240 all the time.
Right.
Sure.
And they got those funny prong plugs that we're not used to seeing. I'm sure they say the same thing about Canada. They got these funny prong plugs that are totally different. When you travel to Europe, you ever bought, that makes me think of another one. Traveling to Europe, you buy those adapters. I've had adapter fail on me. Now, maybe I used it wrong and I put it in a different spot, but I don't think so. I think I bought it online. And maybe I bought something that was made in another country that wasn't recognized even in Europe. And I tried to plug certain things in and it fried them, actually, is what it did.
Yeah,
Yep.
certainly possible.
So again, talking about products that don't work. We all make these mistakes. So this is simple. What should consumers watch out for when buying products online, at stores, anything? What should they be looking for?
If you're buying it in a store, it should have a certification mark on the packaging that you can see. A lot of us buy things online. If you're a smart consumer, you can see whether on that online advertisement it has a certification mark or it confirms that it's certified. That's great. But we recognize that's not going to always happen. The most important thing is when that product arrives, that you look at it to make sure it has a Canadian certification mark on it. Look at the packaging, look at the instructions for use, and get a sense of whether it's a product that you feel comfortable with. If it's got the certification mark, that's really important. But sometimes there can be warning signs that you're going to have risks. If you're buying from a site that isn't marketing to Canadians, if you're buying from a site where there are typos or language issues, those are some of the red flags that you might raise concerns for you that it's not going to be a certified product when it arrives.
Is this as simple as saying if it doesn't have a certification, we shouldn't use it?
Yeah, more or less. All products should have a recognized certification mark right on them with very, very few exceptions. And those exceptions might be products that connect to, say, extra low voltage. But even in the extra low voltage category, if it's got a light in it, if it's got an LED in it, if it's got heating elements in it, it needs to have a certification marking on it. And that certification marking should be exactly as it appears on our website. So I think Emily mentioned it a little bit. We do see a lot of counterfeit marks, so they're easily able to fool people. They look really close, but they might be just a little bit off. Maybe it's tilted one way or another, or there's a spelling mistake on the label. Those things are red flags that are really important to keep an eye out for. It should be identical to what's on our website.
Okay, now I'm going to also assume, I mean, I'm going to tell you a little story that was so cute. I don't know if it was cute, it was foolish. When I think of DC power or, low voltage, I don't think it's strong and I think it's going to be fine. And we're probably 19, we're up at my buddy's farm. We had a few drinks, we're by the fire. It was 100 acres and they had cows on the property. So they got the cow fence. It's a, little electric fence.
Yep.
So we're all standing there, we're talking about the electric fence. Who's going to touch it to see if it has anything? So I'm not afraid of electrical work and don't mess with electrical, but I'm not afraid because I understand electrical, or so I thought.
Mm-hmm.
I walked up and grabbed the fence. I'm like, first I touched it. Oh, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. Then I grabbed it. What I didn't know was it comes in increments of power. It's not constant supply. So me holding it, laughing, then I got the shot. And when I felt that, I went, holy cow. You ever put a 9-volt battery on your tongue?
No.
A lot of people don't like that.
Right.
I did that to my wife and she yelled at me. She actually swore at me. I said, it's only 9 volts. But it can be powerful. And I guess it can. Batteries can cause a fire.
Yeah. One of our safety messages is that there's no such thing as a safe shock. And we don't want to scare people. We want to educate people that electricity is an enormously important element of all of our lives, and we need to respect it. Not to be afraid of it, but to respect it. And part of being a smart consumer is understanding that this is our moment to protect our kids and our households and our families and ourselves from products that might put us at risk.
And it makes sense that don't play with electrical fence that keeps cows in.
Exactly.
I learned not to do that again because it was actually quite shocking.
Yeah.
I was very surprised by that. And these are things that I think you learn as you go. It's one day, I'll tell you another story. My brother was living in one room. We shared a house is what we did. I was in a room in front of the house. And I've always said to everyone, don't take an extension cord and plug a heater into it. A heater should be plugged directly into the wall. And they plugged it into an extension cord, put it on the floor. They had it on full power. It was about 2:30 in the morning, and I woke up to the smell of smoke. And it was in my room. It was so smoky, I could not believe it. I got up, I shot out the door into the hallway. The whole house was full of smoke. I went right to the bedrooms to make sure, everyone was awake, because no one was awake. And the first door I opened was my brother's door. The flame was at the bottom of his bed because they had dropped their clothes, threw it on the heater, not even thinking, or on the extension cord, where it was joined from the heater to the extension cord. The clothes were thrown on top, and that's what started on fire. I yelled. Everyone got out of the house. I quickly unplugged it, put out the fire. Of course, the alarms are going off, and the fire department came. That was something that was so simple that the misuse of any electrical item, and let's talk about extension cords. The foolishness that people are doing. I mean, for years we've seen a lot of tragedies at Christmas, and Christmas is coming, by the way. Ladders, people putting up their lights on. One of the number one accidents is people falling off the ladders, putting up lights. But the other issue is not buying proper lights and putting too many lights on one circuit and or using indoor extension cords outdoor. Like, these are things I don't understand, but it comes down to, I guess, ignorance, just not knowing. So with Christmas coming on this direction very soon, we have some Christmas directions up there. We're going to be doing some shoots later for Christmas. Don't use candles in the house. I don't like candles in the house. I mean, they can cause fires, a dry tree, that is just foolish. And did you know that candles themselves, the off-gassing that comes off a candle is not safe for the environment? Did you two know that?
I actually didn't know that,
No.
no.
Don't burn candles in your house.
We have those little battery candles.
They look cute. They seem to work. They're on batteries and they're very safe. I suppose buying the candles that are battery operated, you got to also make sure there's a certification mark on. Is that true?
Some battery operated equipment doesn't require certification marking, so it might depend on the actual product.
Why?
Again, because the voltages are so very low on those, they would be incapable of creating a shock or fire hazard. And this is the same reason why some extra low voltage products don't require certification. And it really depends on what the power supply is and what the capacity of the power supply is. So if the power supply has enough push behind it to actually create that hazard, we want to make sure everything that's connected to it is properly approved. But when the power supply is so small that it can't really create that kind of hazard, then we can say, all right, that product's acceptable to not have a certification on it.
Okay. But that just makes me raise a question. What mark would I look for, even if it was a low voltage product? Is there any mark that I should see?
If it's got LED lights in it or any kind of luminaire feature to it, it should have a certification marking on it.
So what would be a low voltage product that doesn't require a certification?
So let's say something that might be part of like an alarm system. Maybe the contacts, the electrical contacts that would go for like your window open or something like that, that are connected to a really low voltage supply. They don't contain any heating elements. They don't contain any LEDs or luminaires. Those might not require a certification mark.
Okay, but that helps me. If it's got an LED bulb, it needs a certification.
Yep.
And isn't one of the other elements that if it's battery operated by a battery that you're inserting in that's not being connected to an outlet, those battery operated products are not part of the product safety regime that we have oversight over.
Correct.
Yeah. So
Okay,
if
that
it's
helps.
plugging in,
So anything that plugs into the wall, anything
Yes.
that goes into AC
yes,
should have a certification mark.
Absolutely.
That I think everyone can understand.
yes. Including chargers, so including the charger for your cell phone, that charger needs to have a certification mark.
I've heard of fires from a charger.
Sometimes they can really heat up, right? If they aren't certified. That's
Okay.
one of the risks.
Here's a great example that I've learned. People are buying exterior extension cords that are, let's say, 16 gauge. Do we all know the difference between the gauges is the most important thing? My advice to you is if you're ever going to buy extension cords for outside, it should be 12 gauge and a certification for outdoor use, right?
Yeah,
Nice and
absolutely.
simple. Why would I say 12 gauge? 12 gauge can hold a lot more current and is good for power tools. This is why I know these things, because I've seen my own guys use a 16 gauge exterior extension cord that was meant for lights and lights only, and they put it on all kinds of big tools, and that extension cord coiled like a pig's tail
Mm.
because it couldn't take the power or surge of power that it was trying to use. So there's a great indication. If your extension cord is turning in a circle, you're putting too much power through that line. So the smartest thing I think when it comes to extension cords, I'm the guy to go to the store, to big box stores, any other store, and I'll buy it on sale. And 12 gauge especially, I'm always into the 12 gauge. But most people think that even a smaller gauge, such as 14 or even 16, 18 gauge, that you can use these extension cords, which I never recommend. There should be no extension cord at that small of a gauge in the wire because it is nothing but a fire hazard. If you're only going to plug in Christmas lights, still make sure you got good power cords that are certified.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And check them. So when you take them out of the bin in early December or late November, whenever you're putting up your Christmas decorations, check the power cords, check the lights themselves to make sure that they haven't become damaged over the years. People are using these often for, 3 weeks a year. And so they think that they can last forever because they're not being used for very long. But over time, the wiring can degrade, or animal or other damage can happen. So before
Mice,
you put it
be
up,
chewing on it.
absolutely,
Squirrels.
squirrels for sure. So check to make sure before you put them up that they are still that they have good good connections and that there's no visible damage. And if you've had them for a long time, maybe it's time to replace them.
Good point. I think the smart thing is never just plug it in.
Absolutely.
Like, I think the first thing we do, especially when it comes to Christmas lights, is we check the bulbs, we plug it in, and we look to see if any bulbs are blown.
Yes.
The smartest thing to do is before you plug it in is to check the line. Look at everything, make sure there's no frizz or anything in the line, or again, if any animals may have chewed on it,
Yeah.
because that's going to be safe for your kids more than anything. Secondary, you just made me think of something. There's a lot of Christmas trees online. I'm looking at these palm trees that I want by my pool.
Yeah.
And I never even thought that I should check for certification, but you taught me something. Anything that plugs into the wall, even if it's LED lights, which is low power consumption, should have a certification mark on it.
Absolutely.
So a Christmas tree.
Absolutely. And it's not a bad idea to package those products, those lights or those Christmas trees back in their original packaging, because that way you're going to have the instructions for use, you're going to have the specifications, you're going to know what the voltage is. If you just sort of put them in a bag with none of their original packaging, a year down the road, 2 years down the road, you may not have the documentation you need to be able to assess whether you've got the right kind of installation or you're using it correctly.
I guess we do tend to, take it out of the box, throw the box, recycle it, I hope, recycle the box, and then just put it in a bag or in a different box and put it away for year after year after year, which I know a lot of people do. I never thought of the Christmas tree online, that I could be buying a Christmas tree that wasn't certified.
Absolutely.
The certification mark is super important. You also mentioned something else that's really important to look for, and that's if it goes outside, make sure it's rated for outdoor use. That's incredibly important for especially electrical wiring. That outdoor use approval for it or intended use for that product means that it's rated for exposure for ultraviolet light. It's okay to have out in the sunlight. Sunlight is really damaging to electrical wiring, and it turns it brittle, and the insulation can just fall right off if it's not rated for that. So making sure that not only does it have the certification mark, but it's also approved for outdoor use if you're putting it outside is really important.
I never would have thought of ultraviolet light from hot sun, hot rays would ruin an extension cord for outside. So outdoor use is not just about load or what you're doing, because you can't use an indoor cord outside, but you can use an outdoor cord inside.
Right.
I did not think of that it was also rated for UVs.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
See, even I learn something new every day. You just taught me something.
Perfect.
My daughter just recently did what I did, and she wrapped her house in these outdoor lights. They're string lights and party lights. It's a girl, pink lights. It's a boy, blue lights. Coming up is Halloween, so you can pick and choose up to 1,000 different colors. It's ridiculous. And you know what? I've got it on my house. I like it too. The person who installed it was not a licensed electrical contractor, and I know this. And he told me at the time, you don't need to be licensed to do this because it's low voltage. I got a funny feeling that's not so true.
Yeah, there's probably a bit more to it than just that. It doesn't necessarily have to be a licensed electrical contractor to install the low voltage portion of permanent holiday lights. That can be done by the OEM or original equipment manufacturer or an agent of them that's trained to do that work and authorized to do it by the original equipment manufacturer. If you're installing like a receptacle to plug the power supply into, that has to be by a licensed electrical contractor.
Now, I do know he's recognized by that organization, so I assume that everything's good there. And that's just plugged into an outdoor an outdoor electrical box,
Right.
Which converts it to DC.
Yep.
So that's all fine because that's set up to plug in.
Right, but
But
then
if
he
you're gonna-
runs that wiring that goes, maybe through the house or through the soffits up to connect the lights. That portion of it, even if it's done by original equipment manufacturer or a licensed electrical contractor, you need a permit for inspection with that.
So any exterior light that is put on around your house, even though it's low voltage, requires an electrical permit.
That's right.
Okay.
And there is another safety message related to that. One of the elements of that permanent lighting that's really good is that it stops people from going through that ladder climbing or pole holding to install temporary seasonal lighting.
It's a selling point. You'll never have to get on the
It
ladder
is.
again. It's safe for you. But it could be a fire hazard.
Well, it could be a fire hazard if it's not done correctly, but it does avoid another risk that we want to make sure consumers are aware of, which is the risk of installing the lights. Not just the fall hazard from a ladder, but depending on where you're putting the lights, you could be bringing yourself into proximity with overhead power lines, which can be obviously a very significant safety risk. So whether you're doing seasonal lighting yourself or hiring somebody to help you put up seasonal lighting, just make sure before you do it that you've done a scan of where your power lines are on your property to make sure that when you're climbing up into that tree or climbing up a ladder or using a pole to hook lights onto your soffits, that you're not going to come into contact or proximity to overhead power lines.
There's a lot of people out there that, will do what I did and say, okay, so this is low voltage. I don't need a permit for it, because I asked, right? And he said, no, you don't need a permit for it because I'm not changing any of the electrical. That is false. I need a permit for it.
You need a permit for the portion of it that's creating a new installation. I think Diana sort of described that there's a portion of it that can be done without a permit, but there is a portion for most of these installations that does need a permit.
So the easiest thing is, and I think everyone should know this, is if you're trying to figure out, do I need a permit for anything, is to go to
the Electrical Safety Authority. You're welcome to call our call center or go to our website.
Because they're there to help everyone. They're not there to confuse you. They're there to make sure that you are safe at home. Absolutely. And your kids are safe at home. So how many people say to me, if I get a permit, it's going to raise the taxes on my home? It's like, no. If you put $1 million into your home, it's probably going to raise the taxes on your home. But getting a permit is the smartest thing that anyone can do, because if you do a building without permits, they're going to make you take it down. If you do electrical without permits, you can be held responsible for this, especially the contractors can be held responsible for this, for not having a licensed electrical contractor in or not pulling a permit. But worse is that you have the potential of your house burning down, which is what we don't want.
Absolutely.
So it's not about a cash grab. This is about a safety thing. That's why it's the Electrical Safety Authority.
That's right.
Yeah. Years ago when I was a kid, some of the highest power usage was an oven, right? 40 amp breaker. Under that would be air conditioner, 30 amp breaker. But even when I was a kid, you didn't have the central air conditioning. We had the window air conditioning, which that was plugged into a 15 amp line. So back then we didn't have things, hot tubs. We can go further. EV chargers, holy cow, we can go further. Now the largest consumption product on the market is EVs, right? EV chargers.
Yeah, they're big.
Up to 80 amps. Am I correct on this one?
Typically, yeah, the big ones are 80 amps, usually fed on a 100 amp circuit.
And right now, online, you can buy the chargers almost anywhere. And again, we're going to want to see that it has a Canadian certification on it. Secondary, the most important thing is just don't call anyone to install it. Or you can plug it into your dryer outlet. Don't do that. It's just not smart. Hire a licensed electrical contractor, get a permit, have it installed properly, because you are talking one crap load of electricity, power, that can cause a fire. Simple. I'm assuming you're seeing a lot of this right now.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot of those installations, absolutely. Obviously, we're concerned that there's the possibility that there are installations happening that we're not seeing, and we really want to make sure that consumers are smart. They're buying the products that are certified and having them installed in a safe way.
And it's funny, when it comes to a hot tub, a lot of people will think they can just get anyone to install it. Why do I keep talking about electrical and water? They don't mix. If you put in a hot tub, you want to make sure it's wired right. Like, I don't want to risk sitting in a bathtub with a radio that's plugged into the wall, hoping I don't, it doesn't fall into the. How many people did that years ago? Put a radio by the tub that they're in.
Yeah.
That was years ago. That doesn't happen anymore. Everything outside should be on a GFCI. And here's a simple really way of saying this. If you bought an older house and you didn't bring an electrician to upgrade it or give you advice on the electrical, and it has an outdoor plug that is not GFI protected, and you have an electrical lawnmower, and you go outside when the ground is wet, and you plug that into that receptacle because you're going to cut the grass with an electrical lawnmower, your feet get wet, what can happen?
There could potentially be a shock hazard there, but
Very, because we don't have the ground fault protection.
correct.
Because that trips it right away, where instead that you may get it. And many people have been shocked this way. And it's just simple. Don't plug anything on outside that's not GFI protected. Is that a great way of saying it?
Absolutely.
For sure. And your holiday decorations too.
Yeah.
Make sure that they're plugged into GFCI outlets as well.
I think the smartest thing to do is, I've said this a million times. If you buy a house and you didn't get a chance to bring in a home inspector to take a look at the house and give you advice on that, is to just call a licensed electrical contractor to come in and give you advice on what you bought into. Okay, there's no GFIs on the outside of your home. Is there aluminum wiring? Now, I know aluminum wiring is fine. The problem is insurance, and everyone's changing it from aluminum to copper, and the two wires don't mix. This is why it's so important that if you do have aluminum wire, that you change it over, because most people are not going to realize it's not a good thing. That means you need an AL receptacle, an AL switch, which stands for aluminum. Most people will change that old receptacle, and they'll do it themselves. DIY homeowners will do this, and they're putting in copper into an aluminum. That's a big no-no. So just bring your licensed electrical contractor in, do an inspection, and give me some advice on the house and the upgrades that I need to do. And if you do them, get a permit.
Absolutely. They can also look at your panel and give you a sense of whether, if you are intending down the road to install a hot tub or an EV charger, whether your panel is going to need to be upgraded in order to accommodate that additional draw.
If it looks like you got an old panel, you probably shouldn't do it. It should be a newer panel. That's what we're trying to look at now. And if you've got fuses in your panel still, it might be time to change your panel. Like a long time ago, fuses are still good. But again, it's the dummy rule. It's a 15 amp fuse keeps blowing, so I put in a 20 or I put in a 25, which means you're not allowing that line to break of overconsumption, and that line can heat up and cause a fire in your home. Something so simple. We all thought years ago, put in a 20 amp breaker on a 15 amp line.
Yeah, overfusing is a major problem. That's something that's really dangerous. And if you do have a fuse panel, you should really be taking a look. If that should be a 15 amp circuit, it's got 20 amp fuses on there, that's a hazard. You should get an electrician in.
That's a big hazard.
Yeah.
So with the holidays coming up, and I'm talking Christmas, and I love Christmas. Everyone wants to light up their house. As a matter of fact, 2 years ago, we did a big competition on who could light up their house better than anyone else. And we ran generators just to do this, but it wasn't permanent. So it was a lot of fun seeing what we could do. What is advice that we can give people out there when it comes to extension cords, lights, just plain safe advice for homeowners wanting to really light up their houses?
Make sure it's certified. Make sure it's rated for outdoor use if you're going to put it outdoors. Those are the two big ones. Watch where you install them. You don't want to have, the joint between your decoration and your extension cord laying in a spot where it's going to be in a puddle or something like that. You don't want them running across your driveway or across doorways or stairs, those types of things. And anytime you're plugging in outside, plug them into a GFCI protected outlet.
That's great advice. Now, I understand LED. So LED lights, you can put a lot on one circuit. And a lot of people are probably thinking the same thing I am, is that you can put a lot of lights on one circuit. Legally, you can't, but you can for consumption. So where do you draw the line when it comes to how many lights you plug in one source or an extension cord? Is there any advice on this one?
Sure. So for LED string lights that you would find for, the front of your house or on your Christmas tree, typically they're very, very small consumption, but the manufacturer is going to have a limit on how many you can connect in one string.
They'll
So
say
they
not
might-
more than 4.
Exactly. And those directions are important because those directions are part of the product certification. So when it's certified with a particular size of wire that's capable of a particular load. And that number of strings is intended to make sure that it stays within those limits. So we
I love
want to
what you
follow
just
those.
said. I love what you just said, which a lot of people, my son I'm always pointing at, don't do. Okay, so you look for the certification mark. Awesome. Congratulations. You're good. You can use it. It's exterior. You've got the certification mark. Did you read the instructions?
Yeah.
Isn't it kind of important to read the instructions? I read the instructions on everything. Absolutely everything. I don't know why I do it, but I'm just afraid for that. But I do. And I think it's the smartest thing that everyone can do is read the instructions. A great example is how many lights can you put on one? What they're trying to tell you is don't plug in more than 4 string lights on one circuit or on one extension cord, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And even on, if you think that very first string in the string of 4, that first string has to carry the current of all of them. So that first string might be the smallest wire in the circuit, while your extension cord might be 12 or 14 gauge. Those little tiny tinsel wires in there are a lot smaller than that. They might even be 20 gauge or smaller. So it's important to make sure that those ones are protected as well. And they're protected by how many you can plug in and the tiny fuse that might be in the cord end.
Something I've seen a lot lately is the deer outside, and they're all lit up, right? And I look at them, a snowman, an inflatable snowman
Yep.
for that matter, that have lights inside them.
Yep.
You should, because it's plugged, you need to look for
Yep, absolutely.
a certification mark.
And they're often on 24 hours because there's a small fan in there keeping them inflated. So absolutely, those would need to be certified to Canadian standards. They would need to be plugged in to an extension cord that's not overloaded and plugged into a ground fault circuit interrupted outlet.
Really simple. Do we all know as homeowners that this is very important? We got to think. When it comes to our kids, I think a parent will do absolutely anything. So for your kids, when it comes to electrical, you should make sure that you're doing it right
Absolutely.
and safely. And if you don't know, go to esasafe.com. That's simple.
Absolutely.
And you'll answer questions, right?
We will.
I love that.
Definitely.
People out there to help you. Do it right. Make it right. Stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you like the show, check out the episode page on makeitright.ca for more tips. Listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Amazon Music. Subscribe so you don't miss an episode.